Trump is on the hot seat over shocking Texas flood disaster. In a heartbreaking and politically explosive development, President Donald Trump is under mounting national pressure following the catastrophic flash flooding that devastated Central Texas over the July 4th weekend, leaving at least 32 people dead, dozens more missing, and entire communities reeling from unprecedented destruction. The floods, caused by sudden and intense rainfall over a foot of water in just a few hours, transformed rivers and creeks into roaring torrents, sweeping away homes, vehicles, and entire summer camps. One of the most tragic incidents occurred at a well-known Christian youth camp, where multiple cabins were torn from their foundations and many children were swept into the floodwaters. Local officials have confirmed that at least 14 of the deceased were minors, some of whom remain unaccounted for, leaving families in anguish and rescue teams working around the clock. As helicopters hovered over submerged farmland and emergency boats combed through debris-choked neighborhoods, the scale of the disaster became apparent, raising serious questions about why the storm's deadly intensity had not been better forecasted or prepared for. Critics have been quick to point fingers at the Trump administration, highlighting that earlier in the year, budget cuts had significantly downsized the National Weather Service, slashing hundreds of meteorologist positions and delaying upgrades to storm tracking systems that might have improved early warning capabilities. These cuts, enacted as part of Trump's push to reduce federal spending, were met with bipartisan warnings at the time, but were nonetheless passed. Now, local leaders and citizens are asking if those decisions contributed directly to the lack of adequate warning and response that could have saved lives. President Trump, responding aboard Air Force One, called the situation horrible and one of the worst flood disasters we've seen in years, and pledged federal support, including the deployment of FEMA teams and the National Guard. Still, his tone did little to calm the outrage coming from both state officials and affected communities. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, while appreciative of the assistance, noted in a press conference that local agencies had been overstretched and under-resourced, implying that stronger federal preparation might have made a critical difference. Meanwhile, personal stories from survivors paint a harrowing picture: families clinging to rooftops, children swept several miles downstream, and parents driving through walls of water to reach loved ones. One woman was reportedly carried nearly 20 miles by floodwaters before being rescued in critical condition, while others were pulled from trees and overturned vehicles after clinging to life for hours. The emotional toll is only compounded by the uncertainty still facing many families awaiting news of missing relatives. As images of the devastation circulate, destroyed homes, collapsed bridges, and grief-stricken survivors, Trump's critics in the media and political arena are calling this a failure of leadership and demanding answers about how emergency preparedness protocols were allowed to weaken under his watch. In Washington, lawmakers are now discussing an emergency appropriations bill, while climate experts point to this flood as yet another example of intensifying weather patterns made worse by policy inaction. Trump's opponents argue that this is a defining moment for the administration. Will it rise to meet the challenge of recovery, or will it be remembered for missed warnings and mismanaged resources? With more storms forecast in the coming week, the urgency is growing, not just for rescue and recovery, but for a national reckoning on climate response, infrastructure investment, and the human cost of political decisions. For many in Texas, the flood has become more than a natural disaster. It is a symbol of vulnerability, frustration, and the desperate need for leadership in times of crisis.